So Paul's a friend of mine I met in Taunton, at Fightworks Taunton, through jiu-jitsu maybe 7 years ago, Paul.
Yeah, it must be about that.
Yeah. And we just hit it off. The next time I went back to the UK and I was going to go and train in Taunton, Paul said, "You're not staying in a hotel, you're stopping at my place." So that I did. And we've kept in touch ever since. So Paul, I'm just going to get you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then we'll just have a chat, see where it goes.
James said, my name's Paul Dryburgh. Purple belt in jiu-jitsu. Feels like I've been purple belt forever now, but we'll get to that story. I suppose just on there, kind of telling a bit of my story. I kind of grew up with lots of mental health problems, not just of my own, but kind of stuff in my family and that. I had a bit of a journey. Jiu-jitsu's obviously helped me along the way. My life's changed massively, hugely in the last couple of years, but literally 99.9% positive everything, it's really a lot of this is going to come from the years gone past, troubles with family and growing up through and realizing where I could have grabbed some coping mechanisms a bit earlier on in my life to deal with stuff. But obviously 20 years ago, when I was first diagnosed with I was diagnosed with a borderline schizophrenia. So a personality disorder, basically. Which was a bit of a mad thing to have to kind of accept, really. Hi Paul, you're just a bit fucking crazy. But in the same respects, it answered a lot of questions for me, in my later teenage life, and then growing up through. Some wild times with the drugs and all the rest of it. Sung in a band for about 7 or 8 years. Lords of the Southern Priest, we toured around all over the UK. We had potential to try and go abroad and do stuff, and a band kind of fell apart, fractured, and that. Life goes on. People had lives and they were living them, but it was awesome. The other day I went and seen some of the ex-band members playing in a new band, Betrayers. Fucking awesome, yeah, amazing, good to see. I thought I was going to get that itch again, I want to do it again. But it was I just loved it, sat there watching them, and I was just oh man, I'm just happy to be at home in bed by about 9:30.
What sort of band were you in when you were younger?
It was heavy metal, grindcore, deathcore, mixed up, bit of thrash metal. So I sung, screamed and shouted and hollered, I can't really call it singing. But that in itself, the band days were probably the darkest days. Do you know what I mean? It was the band was it was such a, the honest truth, it was an outlet, but it was such a negative outlet. Do you know what I mean? The emotion of writing songs about, we may as well hit into the emotional stuff straight away, I guess. So when I was 16, my mum got ran over. She got hit by a car, and she basically was never was the same person for that, so it's to say dealing with something like that was mad, because it went on for years.
Yeah.
And the levels of where her personality changed was like massive, like, do you know what I mean? So she had the instant massive head injury, obviously the trauma, 16 years old, I'd only just started a job in a local leather factory, like my first proper job, you know, being phoned up by like a friend of my brother's at work, and he's like, oh, we're coming to pick you up, you know, your mum's been ran over, like she's in Bristol, like we were in Yeovil at the time, you know, getting taken up to like Bristol, which is like an hour away. Yep. Getting taken into the intensive care room, and I mean, I didn't even recognize her. Like I was like looking around the room, like, oh, like where's she at? Like, you know, and she was literally like a bed away, you know, but she was so smashed to fuck that it was just like that in my mum. And to be honest, like, you know, going back over time, talking with the doctors, they probably think I probably already had like underlying like stresses as a teenager, growing up, a few like mental health problems anyway. But that was just like, fuck, like, do you know what I mean? The emotion side of it, like seeing obviously your mum like that's just like, wow, like, you know, just I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But the honest truth was, it was what came in like the weeks and months after that, like, do you know what I mean? I can remember walking in the hospital when she was finally out of intensive care. I walked up like, oh, mum, you know, brought that. Who are you? You know, that was a reaction straight away. Like literally like blank face, like, who are you? Like she didn't even know who I was, like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm just like, and again, like 16, barely 17, like thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like, that's my mum sat there and she doesn't even like know who I am, you know? So it was like things like that, just breaking you down, like, you know? Yeah, so I mean, that was really like where my like mental health started taking like a massive dive, like, do you know what I mean? Like really, really bad. And the trouble is like I lived that lifestyle that I just fed straight into just making it even worse. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like instantly, like my home life with my mum and that, like, because it was never great growing up in the younger years. And to be honest, there's probably a lot of shit in the younger years. It's like, you know, stuff happened, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, parents would smack you a bit more. It was a bit more acceptable. I'm not going to sit here and say my parents beat me to pieces, but it definitely was a nice upbringing, like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's pretty much as I need to say about that before my teenage years. Because obviously once I grew to like 14 and a half stone, no one was fucking putting a hand on me in the house, like, you know? So at 13, 14, that all just come to an end. Yeah. Because my stepdad was about 4 stone smaller than me. And like, do you know what I mean? Like he was a lot smaller than I was. So all of that just instantly, like the day come when I was like, well, it's up to you. If you want to put a hand on me, we'll see how this fucking goes. Like, do you know what I mean? And they all soon decided enough was enough. But yeah, going back to the thing with my mum, like, you know, it was like, it was from that, you know, that's when everything started taking a really bad, like downward turn. You know, I got heavily into like drugs and class A drugs, ecstasy, and all of that. And it was good. It was a laugh in the beginning. You know, I had a solid friend group. You know, we'd go out together having a laugh, smoke a bit of pot, you know, have a giggle, get stoned, someone to be whitey and throwing up out of the car. Like, you know, it's just lads. It's just not even lads, because there was a couple of friends, girlfriends that all hung around with us, you know, and it was just fun times, like any young'uns growing up. But the honest truth is, I look back on it now and all I was doing was just feeding the monster. Do you know what I mean? That's literally all that was happening. It was like this big, and everything I did then, literally from like 16, 17, right up through probably until like my late 20s, like into the, you know, really before I finally like drew a line in the sand with myself. Yeah. So all those years then literally was just, everything was just like feeding the monster. Do you know what I mean? And that's literally like the analogy, like, you know, it was like all the drugs, because then all of a sudden the drugs were just like a gateway to get away from that everyday emotion. Yeah. You know, I was living life, like every time I saw my mum, like my mum was like really prim and proper growing up, you know, she was always in like suits, she was like a well-educated woman, she like worked like secretary, you know, just give you a bit of background info. Yeah. You know, you didn't really get away with swearing in the house, like all the rest of it, you know, no elbows on the table at dinner time, you will be in at dinner times, you blah, blah, you know, like that's the life we kind of grew up with. It was like strict, but we were like kind of taught well, like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. You know, in and amongst the Highlands and stuff, but we were like taught well, like, you know, but all of a sudden it was like she'd be shouting and swearing at everyone, you know, like her appearance was like super unkept, like, you know, she just didn't care, like, you know, she just she just wasn't her. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So of course it was like the whole life then growing up. I had like moved out of home by now, you know. I'd like moved back home for a little bit, just a month, or, you know, not even a month. I don't think. I just couldn't handle it. Like, do you know what I mean? Every day waking up, seeing that. And that was it then. That was like, oh, can we get this drugs? Can we do that? You know, and I just like basically, you know, I never like injected anything into myself. Like, you know, I've never touched heroin, never touched crack cocaine, nothing like that. But just about everything else, it was like if I could get it down my neck, I did. Like, do you know what I mean? So, you know, it was like getting onto like that, like loads of like pills, powder, prescription drugs were a good laugh, you know, especially when you smashed a bit of alcohol back with them. And I say all this terribly, but like, I'm not gonna lie, it was all amazing. It's like drugs are ace, but like, yeah, the trouble with drugs is like they pretty much start showing you like when you ain't got control of yourself. Like, do you know what I mean? So yeah, so drugs are good, but always in the right circumstances. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I just fed the monster then for a lot of years. I didn't start into the band until kind of like early 20s, and that was really when I was probably at my most. So I had a massive breakdown probably like when I was like 20, 21. Like it's going back some time now, so it's all a bit hazy, but it's roughly about 2021. I had a big breakdown. I carried on working, carried on just doing loads of drugs. I was never really a big drinker because my real dad was an alcoholic, and he fucked off and left my mum when she fell pregnant with me. So that was always something that was like there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in my head, it was like, oh, as long as I'm not an alcoholic, it's fine. But I'd go out and smash God knows how much drugs from like Thursday to Monday. Like, you know, I was just, yeah, you know, I can remember going working in the leather factory because, you know, I was in there working for like 7 years. You know, I didn't leave there. I started 16, didn't leave there till like 23. 22 actually, and Jesus Christ, like, you know, I used to go in some Mondays and they'd be like, look at the fucking state of you, you can't be in there looking like eyes like this, John, like no sleep for about 3 days in a row, just fucking off it. so that was that kind of bit of life, and again, it was just feeding that monster that then was just getting chewed up. And yeah, and to be honest, I was on so many drugs and come downs and that the depression side of things really wasn't like, it's hard to tell you're depressed when you're like bouncing off the ceiling and then just so low because you're on come down. Do you know what I mean? You know, I got into doing like a lot of amphetamine. So then I was like, you know, hiding my food in my bedroom because I lived back with my parents. And like the year I was like really bad on the amphetamines, like, it's quite weird. I always say I had like, I was doing my provisional driving test at the time because I didn't have a license. And I had a photo before I started on the amphetamine, obviously for my provisional, failed it. And then I left it about a year. And this was the year I was just strung out on the amphetamines, like, and I had the photo taken again. And it was just like, I got the photos in a box somewhere, but it's like, the two unhealthy twins, do you know? Well, the one healthy and the one unhealthy, do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I just looked like a smackhead version of myself, like, really. It was horrendous, like, you know, really bad. But yeah, and to be honest, like, so of course, once I got into my like early 20s and that, like I say, I worked through, had quite a breakdown, like in my early 20s. I carried on trying to work. I changed jobs. I got out of the factory I was working in. Because I used to work like in a raw skins, like a raw leather factory, you know, like taking all the like fleshy membrane off. So it's a bit like I watched a film. Dee got me to watch a film with is it Christian Bale? Was it like, what's it called? The one where he like loses loads of weight and that. What's that film called, babe? The Machinist, like, yeah. So I watched that. And there was massive parts of it just reminded me of when I worked in Pittards in the leather factory. You know, I used to go to work in the dark. I'd be in the factory. I wouldn't leave till the dark. I'd hardly ever go outside. So I was coming to work in the dark, standing on a machine on my own, facing a wall, skinning like 6,000 to 7,000 skins a day on piecework. Every so often I'd go for a wander around the factory and have a bit of a giggle in the afternoon. So I'd got my piecework rate up high so I could afford to like be a bit lazy in the afternoon. But the honest truth was, I was living this lifestyle then for like years. Do you know what I mean? Like in the factory, going in the, you know, in the winter time, it was like 6 months of like, you know, well, 4 months anyway. I'd hardly be seeing the sun, you know, because I'd be in the factory early and wouldn't leave the factory till late. And that in itself, when you look at it, it's such an unhealthy you know, again, that in itself was a massive part of just like feeding the monster, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I left there, went to a stonemason's place, great job. But yeah, within a year, I had a really, really bad breakdown. Like, you know, that was it. Life, I just couldn't really function then. And it wasn't long after that was, you know, that was the first time, like, I was probably like, I'd been off work for about a year. The band stuff was like, all right. Just writing lots of music that was just really like kind of venting my feelings and emotions. But like I say, it was like, it's quite a negative thing. Do you know what I mean? It was like you go to band practice and you're writing these songs about, you know, like emotions connected with your family, dark shit, like, do you know what I mean? Just like really not great. But then the smoking and the little bit of drinking and the drugs within the band lifestyle then become, you know, quite toxic to myself, like, you know, as well as like, you know, then, so I wasn't really that nice a person to be around, is the honest truth, you know, right back then. Was a bit wild and just like, but wild in all the wrong ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not great. Like, do you know what I mean? It was just not great times. Like, you know, everyone's always like, yeah, the band must have been brilliant. It's like, well, it kind of was, but everything I was writing songs about, like, do you know what I mean? And all of that, it was like really good. But in the flip side, it just was just like, yeah, fuck, man, this is just not good. And the trouble is something like that, it was like 7 years later, do you know what I mean, until you really start realizing that it's not good. It's really feeding into the kind of like, you know, like the bad kind of way of life. So of course when the band fell apart, again, that was another badly like crappy thing, but to be honest, it was quite positive at the same time, because it made me just go like, right, you need to kind of understand what life is about and where life goes, like, you know. Going back to kind of like when I first kind of had a breakdown, like, you know, so the first year, I think I was like 20, so I had a really bad breakdown, stopped working when I was like about 20, nearly 23. So I had 3 years out of work. I kind of admitted to myself then, right, I really do need help, like, you know. I was always like anti the medication. I was always anti the system, seeing what it did with my mum, because she obviously had bipolar, and then with her car accident, we've seen how much the mental health system in this country failed her.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I was quite adamant that like that wasn't the help I needed and that, you know, but then all of a sudden it was like, well, fuck, maybe it is. Because I feel bad by this point. Do you know what I mean? I'm waking up now, like crying every day, just not coping, not doing the basic things, brushing my teeth, having a shower every day, looking after myself, like, you know. Yeah, it just really wasn't good. Really, really wasn't good by this point. Lived on my own cottage, and it was just like, it was bleak. So there was a day when I had like a massive, like, just woke up, all I was doing was crying, smoking pot, you know, like my life just consisted of not really doing a lot, wasn't working. And I could just remember vividly the day, like, do you know what I mean? I was just like, I woke up, again, just crying, smoked loads of pot, drunk probably like about 80 fucking pints of coffee. So, you know, like the weed's making you want to do that, and the coffee's making you want to do that, and you're just like, you know, so fucking, what are you doing? You know, and I just found myself really strange. I just found myself on the bridge right next to the cottage I lived in. Just stood up on the side of the bridge, like, do you know what I mean? It's like traffic's hammering down underneath it. Yeah, I mean, I was just, in my mind, I was just ready. Like, it was just, I was just done. Do you know what I mean? I was done with the crying, done with like feeling like I had no like power to try and change where my mindset was at. You know, I didn't really have anything that positive right there and then. And yeah, my daughter, it's just my relationship with my daughter is like proper fucked up, like, you know. But back then, like when she was young, like I had my daughter when I was 19. So obviously here, like, you know, she's like 4 or 5 years old. She lived with her mum. But that was literally the one and only thought in my head, stood on the side of that bridge. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like right on the point of like, enough, I've just had it. I'm just, you know, and that was the only one thought really come in my head. Well, think how she's going to feel when people tell her that kind of thing. You know, wasn't even so much about the relationship with her there and then, you know. It was just like the one thing in my head, all I could think was like, fuck, imagine like when she grows up and she sees my friends and my friends' children that are the same age as her, like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, fucking hell, you know. So that was the one thing then. And I climbed down off the bridge and, you know, phoned a friend and just, you know, just kind of was open about where I was. But I didn't really tell a lot of people then. It was, you know, in my 20 years ago, that it was embarrassing, like at the time, you know. I can sit and talk about it now, you know, like that one I can sit and talk about because it's like, I did so much and I've done so much and I still do so much to make sure that I'm not ever going to become that person or be that way again. Like, do you know what I mean? Because that is an honest thing. Like, you know, you definitely have to like kind of make sure that you definitely have to make sure that you're kind of like checking in with yourself, you know, like, and make sure you've got a good set of people around you. You know, it ain't even got to be a lot of people, just good people that will check in with you as well and help you out, you know. People that really understand like what your moods and emotions can be about, like, do you know what I mean? So right now in life, you know, right now, I couldn't have a better set of people around me, like, do you know what I mean? Like my girlfriend, partner, like Dee, like she's amazing. Like I've never known anyone just to understand 101% like every day. You know, I've only just got to be like faltering a tiny bit and she's already just like, you know, what's up, you know, what's going on, you know. So to have that connection and like feeling with someone is just massive anyway.
That's brilliant.
And then just handfuls of friends, you know, people like yourself, you know. It's people you feel like you can talk to on an emotional level. We don't have to know someone for like millions of years and hundreds and thousands of days and been around someone like tons. It's just when you know you've kind of got that little bit of a connection with someone, you feel comfortable enough to like talk about the vulnerable subjects, isn't it? Like, you know, because that in itself, it's finding the air that you're confident enough to like let stuff go and unload things. Like, do you know what I mean? So that in itself's like massively important. But I've gone on a bit of a ramble there, kind of lost my thread a bit.
So
anyway, like, you know, like the suicide thing, that was like the first time. We may as well just get this out of the way because I don't really want to like hound it too much. So the second time was like a couple of years ago. And the honest truth is, like, this is the one, like, it's easier to talk about now. And this is like, it really took me by surprise. And this is why I will always say to people, like, you know, you always need to make sure you're checking in, because like a couple of years ago, I would have told you I was bulletproof for my mental health. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I'd immersed my like life into my jiu-jitsu. I'd learned lots of lessons from my jiu-jitsu. But I was clearly unhappy where my life was at, like go back like, you know, 4 or 5 years, you know, probably like unhappy further back than that, even when you come and stayed, to be honest, mate. You know, my life, as much as I seemed like I was happy, was not the greatest. I was kind of living a bit of a pretend life, like, do you know what I mean? Everything being tied up in promises of like houses and businesses and like money and this and that. And you know, a lot of stuff that kind of weighed on me at the time, that obviously that I just didn't really feel like strength just to go like, fuck this, I'm not happy, I don't, you know, and want to get out of the situation. So obviously as the years went by, I just learned to immerse myself more and more into my jiu-jitsu, like, do you know what I mean? Because it is an immersive thing, no matter what. Even if you're the happiest person in the world, like, jiu-jitsu is immersive. Like if you're not in the moment on the mat, like you're gonna get fucked up. Like, do you know what I mean? When your best mate's trying to like choke you unconscious, like you best be like there understanding he wants to choke you unconscious. Like, do you know what I mean? As bad as that sounds, it is good fun. So the immersiveness of jiu-jitsu, like for me at the time, was amazing, because say amazing, it was kind of amazing in ways but really not good in others. But it really helped me start being like, well, I just need to do an extra day's training or an extra couple hours training. You know, by the time I worked for myself, I managed to get life where I was able to like do plenty of work and earn good money as an electrician. But I was also able to be like, well, fuck it, I'm having the afternoon off and go and train. You know, like, you know yourself, I had my garage set up in the house, you know, matted and that in the end. Before I had the house at the cottage, I had a big space out the back where we used to just chuck the mats out in the summer. you know, so it was always good. It was like life had got to that point, but you know, I was so unhappy with my relationship at the time. All I did really was just bury my head and submerge myself more and more into jiu-jitsu. Like, you know, as I went through blue belt, just competed loads, got into my purple belt, competed even more, trained even more, you know, it was like, you know, and by the time I kind of like had and was running my own gym, jiu-jitsu was kind of like life, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was like the healthiest, it was like the most healthy, unhealthy coping mechanism ever, because it allowed me to just submerge so much of myself into it that the Paul everyone saw every day wasn't really who I was.
No.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because it allowed me to kind of like offload so much stress and so much unhappiness on the mat in such an immersive way that we all know what it's like. You go to jiu-jitsu in a bad mood, you do a session, you walk out of jiu-jitsu smiling.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Like, I'm not going to say that is like 100% truth, because it fucking well ain't. But, you know, a lot of the time you're going to go in jiu-jitsu with something on your mind. You're going to have a good roll, good laugh with friends, good hard battles. You're going to get smashed or do a bit of smashing, or probably a bit of both if you're good rolling with all different people. And you're going to come out of there feeling like, you know, your woes and your worries have definitely like come down a good like couple of notches. Like, anyone that does jiu-jitsu for more than like a year or two will understand that. And it's probably a big reason why they've carried on doing jiu-jitsu, because it allows them that little bit of like completely submersive time on your own. And whether you're there for that or not, it doesn't really matter. But that's what it does to you. That's the addictive side, I think, of jiu-jitsu. That's what gets people so hooked into it so quickly, like, you know. As well as it just being brilliant and lots of fun. But yeah, and the trouble was then is like my whole life just became immersed in jiu-jitsu. Like, do you know what I mean? So when the time came and like I finally said, like, that's it, relationship's done and dusted after 17 years, like, you know, have the fucking house, have it all, I just want a bit of money out of it. You know, like, for the 3 years I lived in that house, I fucking put blood, sweat and tears into the home. Like, you know, I was the only one that did any of the renovating work. I was the only one that just did fucking loads, like, do you know what I mean? So there was a massive part of me that went into the house that within literally minutes of a conversation, all of a sudden it was like, you know, the house no longer was mine. I went from sitting on a sofa looking at a TV that was my home, and within minutes it was like, it felt like I was sat in a rented property, like literally like that. Do you know what I mean? So and it was the avalanche of it all was so fast. You know, like, because I was happy just to go out of the home. To be honest, I didn't want to stay in the home. Like, everything with it, like, already the underlying, you know, away from the relationship and the house, like my relationship with my daughter was already faltered and fractured by then. So our relationship was crappy. She had her own kid, like, you know, so being a granddad, and I'd only ever seen my grandson like once as well, you know, because mine and my daughter's relationship so, you know, so fraught. And again, that comes back to kind of like my ways, my mental health problems myself, not being good at being able to conversate and communicate at times, like, working on that in a big way still, trying to. But yeah, so of course, all of a sudden I went from kind of being in this pretend life where I had all of the jiu-jitsu and a mortgage and a home and my garage and the house and the mats, the dogs and whatever. And it just went like literally just fucking within minutes. It's like, well, the fucking house ain't yours. You know, sounds like a weird thing, but, you know, with everything that went on in the relationship, the dogs felt like they weren't really mine or a part of me a long time before the relationship ended, which was really a bit of a shit thing. They were almost used like a fucking weapon, you know, in the last few years in the relationship. It was like, you know, oh, you don't do this and enough time with the dogs and whatever. So it made the relationship, even with my dogs, became really like fucking blurred and weird, which I don't know whether anyone's going to understand that. I know it sounds strange as fuck, but it really did. It became such a blurred thing. It was really odd. You know, they weren't really my dogs anymore. Which was another thing that was like really gutting to try and kind of like another thing I had to try and digest and swallow at the time. So I literally went from not having everything, but I went from kind of having quite a comfortable, it was a very uncomfortable, comfortable life. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm guessing at this point, I kind of hadn't really admitted to myself that I didn't fucking want that life anyway. So what was I still doing there? But within that, it was such a quick turnaround that I was just blown off my feet by my own coping, my own mechanisms. Like, do you know what I mean? And within about an hour, again, I just found myself walking the streets, fucking crying. All I could think about was just like, it's just gone. Everything's gone. I was just so numb. Like, I had nothing. You know, people knew, like relationship had already like broken down a week or so before this. So like, you know, friends were still being in touch and like, you know, you okay, checking in, what's going on, how's it going, blah, 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 you know. But this one evening, that was it. And it was like, you know, line in the sand, all that's gone.
Yeah.
But with that, then obviously my brain just went on this like massive roller coaster of emotion. You know, I couldn't comprehend in a sensible way that, oh right, all that's gone and this is like a fresh start.
Yeah.
In my head, it was just sat on the sofa in a home that wasn't my home.
Yeah.
That really was minutes beforehand, and all of a sudden I'm going like, there's fucking nothing, and it just went really fucking dark, really fucking quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't explain it in any other word for that. Because genuinely in my own head, I thought I would never get there again.
Yeah.
Never get to that point of being that low.
Yeah.
So it really took me by surprise. It just comes straight in, and you know, I found myself like walking the streets, found myself like, all I could think was how am I going to do this so it doesn't impact on someone else? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want someone to have to find me. I don't want someone to have to pick my pieces up from somewhere. Like, do you know what I mean? So that I was literally walking the streets for probably like more than an hour, and that's all I could think in my head was, how is this going to happen where it doesn't impact the person that finds me? I couldn't give a fuck about anyone else, to be honest. All the other people that I knew or had some kind of emotional tie with, they weren't even in my head.
No.
Like, none of that. The only thing in my head was like, I don't want to have to put that on some poor fucker that I don't know, and then could potentially screw their life up. So I spent ages just walking around. Oh, like, if I did it here, would they not find me? If I fucked off out of the town into like one of the villages or out into the countryside, probably no one will find me then. Do you know what I mean? And it was all these things. It was just like, you know, and then the honest truth is, my phone went off. And it was another one of my like really good friends from school, like Chris Lewis. And I can remember the conversation, like, you know, like my phone went off message and it was him, and he was just like, mate, like, are you okay? Like, really, really, really genuinely, like, are you okay? Like, what are you doing? Like, how are you? Like, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, fuck, like, do you know what I mean? Fucking hell. Like that a randomer thing, you know. I would always see like Lewis about everywhere. We'd always chat and get on. We always have done, you know. We hung around, you know. We were ones that done loads of the drugs and everything together when we were young, you know. Like, we were in the same year at school and that, so we known each other for a long time. Like, but just that one conversation, do you know what I mean? That one text message, that one little message was the one thing that just, I went from that 101% mind thought of just wanting to just be gone, to having that little conversation of like, well, yeah, I'm fucking shit right now, mate. Like, do you know what I mean? And I fucking was. Like, do you know what I mean? I was literally like minutes, seconds away from like, just, that's it. Like, you know, gone and game over. And it was that one message then that like really just, and again, emotionally, just so fast, all of a sudden I was in a conversation where I was talking to someone about how bad I felt. Do you know what I mean? That one message was just like the complete turning point. You know, that one message now is just the reason why I'm still sat here having this conversation with you. Like, do you know what I mean?
Does he know that, Paul?
Yeah, he does. I tell him all the time. Like, you know, he's an amazing guy. He really is. Like, you know, he turned his life around massively. He won't mind me saying this, but he was a bit of a bellend when we were growing up. He was the twat that would always get us fucking kicked out of the nightclub, so wanting to fight every fight. So he was always like in my bad books, because it's like, why do I want to pay a tenner to get in here when 20 minutes you're going to get us all fucking kicked out? So it's like, but yeah, I tell him, because to be honest, he turned, mate, I tell you what, he could probably do a podcast with you, but he turned his life around. Like, you know, he got about 7 kids, come to the last point where his like final missus that he had like kids with, she was bad on like drugs, like really bad. I don't know the whole ins and outs of the story, but she wasn't looking after the kids. She was like doing some really bad shit. you know, not caring for the kids properly. And he just went, do you know what? He had a really good engineering job, all that. He just went, fuck all that. That's my children. And he literally just took all 7 kids on. He just went, but that's my kids. And he has done ever since. And he's lived in a flat with like loads of his children living with him. Now he's got like a house that he's been doing up, you know, and he's even gone back to work in the last year.
Yeah.
You know, so it's amazing to see people like truly inspirational. You know, he ain't got some story to tell about, you know, winning the world championship or going rags to riches and blah, 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 blah. But I tell you what, he has got a story to tell us in rags to riches with like the guy he become and who he is now, you know, and that in itself, like, you know, we don't always need some crazy, massive, like highlighted story to like try and find some inspiration for something, do we? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You know, I think too many people want to try and be inspired by some big, like, oh, this guy did this against all the odds. It's like, well, yeah, cool, but like, look a little bit closer to home, and you'll fucking see those stories going on all the time with people. So yeah. So I mean, that was that. But I mean, as fast as I went downhill, I really came back up quite quickly from that one, because I soon realised that I had a lot of really good friends around me. Yeah. You know, very quickly. I soon realised there's a lot of people gave a fuck. Like, you know, when I actually was like quite, you know, the first time I didn't tell anyone. This time, you know, I have friends around me that I felt comfortable enough to say, like, do you know what, I nearly did this. Like, do you know what I mean? This nearly happened. Yeah. Didn't tell everyone, but obviously it was a good few people, you know. So there was a good handful of people around me that knew. Yeah. And from that point then, people would be like every week. This then went on for probably like the next 6 months or so. Like people would just be like, "Are you cool?" You know, and I was good. I was okay. Like within a week or two, I was probably like better than I'd really been before. Yeah. Because it was a realization all of a sudden that it could happen to me again. And I need to be aware of that. But also it was a realization that obviously, like, so much of your own happiness just lies right in your own hands. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like we all get fucked off and pissed off with people. They piss me off and this happens, or I'm not happy with that, or blah, 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 blah. Like, do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, we ultimately hold the power to our own happiness. So when I looked back on life and I went, well, what's the things that's really made me like unhappy? Like really, really unhappy. And I kind of sat there and had some really fucking brutally honest conversations with myself. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And the answer at the end of all of it was, well, I could have made the decision to get out of that earlier. I could have made the decision not to do certain things. I could have made the decision to do certain things. I could have made the decision with all of it. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? So ultimately, the responsibility was always mine. Like, do you know what I mean? There's probably like one thing I'd say in my life that I didn't have the control of whether it made me happy or not. And that was the fact of like back in the day when my mum got ran over. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that, ultimately, there was nothing, you know, apart from like, you know, locker in the boot of the car or something on that day. There's probably nothing I could have done, you know, within my power to stop that from happening. So that's one thing that I can't say is my responsibility. But obviously at like 16, 17, when she did get run over, I just obviously didn't have all the coping mechanisms and whatever to deal with that. Yeah. And like I said earlier on, back when I was like 23, the mental health conversation like it is now still wasn't really a thing back then. Yeah. Which is why really, again, want to do this podcast, want to tell people like the mental health conversation is cool. It's like having a conversation about your good knee and your bad knee or a bad back. Yeah. You know, there's nothing wrong with just saying like I've suffered, like my brain suffered. I've like, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, sometimes the honest truth is, it can be really difficult for people to kind of understand you or get you, or like you can unreasonably expect people to understand where you're coming from, but yet you've told them nothing about those kinds of your own walks of life. Do you see what I mean? Yeah, yeah. You know, so sometimes, you know, having that little bit of background information with people you're going to be around a lot, once you start getting comfortable being able to say it and talk about it, you know, it's helpful, isn't it? You know, if you work every day with a group of people, or, you know, like go back to the jiu-jitsu team, you know, it's like kind of like let people know where you're at, let people know, you know, like where you're at, how you are, all those kinds of things. and all of a sudden you start realizing that, yeah, people do genuinely like care, like, people do genuinely like give a shit, and people do genuinely start trying to understand,
Yeah.
you know.
They can't care about things that they've got no idea about.
No. And don't get me wrong, like I've been that person where I ultimately expected people, and the honest truth is there's still a little bit of my communication fucking faux pas at the moment. Like, I've been that person where I ultimately expect people just to be like, oh yeah, Paul, we understand why you feel like that. And I convey no communication whatsoever.
Yeah.
So like I'm still, even right now, even more so right now, because it's more important to me than ever to really, like, I'm in such a good place in myself and such a happy place in myself that this is the time now that I really need to just do that extra little bits of fine tuning work on my stuff that's holding me back, on my communication skills. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I said, before we started chatting, obviously, like we were talking about, and something we wanted to press on was the fact of, like, we hear loads of good stories where people are on their ass and they, they come back up and they do well and they never fall back down ever again. And like, do you know what? That's fucking amazing. But I can honestly probably hand on heart tell you that ain't really the majority of the stories.
Yeah.
It's like when you've really been in the hole with it, when you've been in that dark place, like, the truth is you more than likely can and will end up back there in some degree if you're not careful with your life. And it's easily done as well. That is the trouble. We do put a lot of pressures on ourselves, like, so it does become something quite easily done. So yeah, but I mean, that's kind of like the mental health side of things, really.
Yeah. So
I mean,
so you're no longer in Somerset.
No, I am in the beautiful.
Something's drawn you away from Somerset.
I am in the beautiful Welsh Wales with the most beautiful person I've ever met in my life. So yeah, this life is good. Yeah, I know it's sickening for people to hear that, but yeah, life is good.
No, it's great to hear.
Yeah.
So Dee's Welsh.
Yes, yeah. So she is a Welsh girl through and through. Yeah, we got chatting online.
Yeah.
Quite innocently in the beginning, to be honest, over a picture of a cat, her cats, obviously.
Yeah.
And we were both like, I was still probably in the process of doing the stuff, getting myself sorted within myself. I was going through this little quick process in my life where it was like, right now, I was able to start processing lots of little bits of negative stuff. And I was able to go like, right, well, you're definitely at fault for like that, and that. So you need to understand myself. I need to understand that big part of what was causing conflict or thing needs to like be put away, dealt with and done, because it don't need to be there. Yeah. So I was instantly already doing this kind of like building within myself.
Yeah.
She had been through some really quite shitty, horrible relationships. So of course she was in a position where I was like, yeah, it's quite funny because we were both obviously quite attracted to each other online chatting. For me at like 39, I'd never chatted to someone online, not like that, really. So it's a bit of a weird thing for me. And then we were both kind of adamant it was something we didn't want, but we obviously both really did want it. So we were having lots of good open conversations with each other. It's like, right, well, she suffers with her anxiety really bad. That's been from like past traumatic experiences, like, and she still does. And, like I say, it's something that she's learning to deal with and cope with herself. And, I take a lot of strength from seeing how she does that and battles it, because it can be quite crippling, like, really crippling for her, like, and it's quite hard to see sometimes. But so we both were very honest about where we wanted, but we were both very honest with each other. We were both very honest with the fact of like, we didn't want to go into something new, no matter what, carrying the bits of baggage that we knew that we could deal with and let go ourselves, like, Yeah. So we had lots of really good, healthy conversations before we even met. Loads of really good, healthy conversations, like, Yeah. it was like close to like a Christmas period. So we'd already met each other. So our first date come about, this is quite a good story. How our first date come about was basically like Dee worked for Kat Von D, like obviously the ex-Miami Ink, quite famous tattoo artist.
Yep.
Kat Von D. So she was like a makeup artist for her in Swansea, and the Debenhams there,
Yep.
on the counter. And as we were like chatting, she advertised doing like a tattoo cover up, like makeover, which involved like a heavily tattooed person. Basically, sorry, I'm just looking at my phone so I get a picture up and you can see it. But which involved like having quite a heavily tattooed person, i.e. myself, being covered up with this special locket foundation that basically made your tattoos disappear.
Oh yeah.
So she told me, oh yeah, come, like, first of all, she said, oh, you don't want to drive all the way to do that. You know, we'd already arranged to have this date. Like, she invited me to go and watch like Brutality Will Prevail in Cardiff, which I thought was quite cool. You know, girl asking you to go to a hardcore show.
Yeah.
You know, never had that before, so that was quite good. Yeah, so we'd already arranged the date anyway. That was going to be in December, and this was like November the 23rd anyway. So this makeup thing. So I just said, no, fuck it, I'll come and do it. It'd be amazing, you know. And we were kind of like a bit like, you know, little teenagers again, like, oh no, we can't do that, or you know, all that. But then it was like, look, you couldn't have a safer scenario, could you? You're going to come up, we're going to like just be chatting, you're going to be getting paid for it, and we're just having a laugh. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, no one's lost anything. It'd just be really cool. So I traveled up to Swansea, drove up there. First time I laid eyes on her for the real was I just knew something completely different from that point. Literally the minute we met each other, like, you know, knew something really before we even met each other, but really once we kind of like met. But yeah, and then we went off, had a coffee, chat, talked, had a nice cuddle and a kiss, and then that was it. It was in the shop window, and she had told me, I'll probably only be about 20 old grannies walk past. So anyway, there's Paul in the shop window with his top off. Luckily, I'd worn my best fucking pants as well, boxer shorts, because my waistline was all hanging out. And that was it. It was in the shop window getting this makeup cover-up stuff put on me. I'll show you the pictures in a minute. Fuck knows how many people come to the window, but I tell you, it was a lot more than 20. There was like ladies from the other departments in the Debenhams running out, going, oh my God, look at this, and then running back in again and coming back with about another 20 people. And I was just like, hang on a minute, this fucking ain't what you told me was going to happen, right? Because we were literally in one of the main shop window parts. I'm in the shop window, and there's all people just doing their shopping, walking past. Like, what's this dude doing over there? Like, you know? So, but it was funny, you know, we got on like an absolute house on fire right from that minute. She did an amazing job. So if you can see it, this is, let me just get this going correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see that?
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
So that's basically makeup covering up. Now, you'll never be able to see the detail, but you can actually see my chest hair and all the rest of it through the cover up.
That's incredible.
So that's my back.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And that's on, you know, we did this, well, say we, I just stood there. So Dee did this in literally like about 2 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely crazy, like.
That's
but amazing. It was mad. It was like, we did it a couple hours, and then it was like she had to go back to work for the last couple hours. I was allowed then to go up in Debenhams. It's all obviously like secure all the inside of the building. I was allowed to go up to the toilet thing then. It was so funny. It was like scratching off a scratch card. I was there with a bit of bloody paper towel. Like, I had to take all because that was the only clothes I had. So I had to strip off in this bathroom, just my boxer shorts. Fold my jeans to one side, hoping no one was going to walk in. And then I like with these blue paper towels and a bit of water, like trying to rub this makeup off me. But it's like literally rubbing off a fucking scratch card. It was just like, I liking it too. But yeah, that was the first date. And then I just went off for a wander in Swansea, and then we headed out for pizza, and amazing. That was it. That was how it was. And then from there, we would see each other every couple of weeks. Like, say, went to the gig together, Christmas. Well, no, we didn't see each other at Christmas. We made a point that we'd only seen each other a couple of times. So obviously, we've been like talking for a while, but we made a point come Christmas that we would not spend Christmas time together. Like, because it was a bit quick. It'd be a bit weird, me sat around with our family and all the rest of it. And to be honest, it was like probably one of the the best decisions, I think that decision we made, because it was definitely we, because I think if she had said, oh, you know, you could come at Christmas, I think I probably would have been like, yeah, brilliant, you know, and gone, just so I didn't feel like I was going to be on my own. But to be honest, like that Christmas, I was on the beach while it was still dark, so it was probably like 5:30, 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, I was on Burton Bradstock Beach. It was fucking cold. I was like doing a bit of yoga, and then decided to take all my clothes off and go swimming in the sea for about 10 minutes as well. But what a day. What a therapeutic day. It was obviously shit having to sit there and swallow the fact that just about everyone I knew was having a fucking ace time with their families, and I was like on a beach in Bradstock on my own, freezing my dick off. But on the same respects, what that day and those kinds of moments really allowed me to understand, like, you know, being on my own and how strong I was really on my own, like, you know, that all kind of fell into place, you know, and as stupid as it sounds, it's kind of like that was important for me. You know, that little step there was important for me. So that Christmas was like a fucking weird one, really good one. I'll never forget it. Like, do you know what I mean? It wasn't good for all the traditional reasons of being good. But it was strong, and it helped our relationship right from the off. It gave us some really good boundaries to build our relationship from. But it obviously then allowed me to like do something within myself, a little bit like self-help, self-therapy, innit? Like, do you know what I mean? And it was good. And then the afternoon I went and had dinner with a friend like Josh, you would have met at Fightworks. With his kids and family, like, do you know what I mean? Sat with those guys for a couple of hours, had some food, because they wanted me there, like, you know, and that was that. So so mine and Dee's relationship really, he's just grown from that, to be honest. It was like, obviously then, you know, it was only really the following like February, March, the COVID thing started, lockdown all started to come into kind of a little bit into effect. My work kind of dried up. I kind of came and stayed with her in her home, because we didn't really want to just be on our own in our houses. And if we couldn't travel, you know, we didn't know then back at the beginning of all this, whether you were going to be able to go from A to B, travel, do whatever. You know, like I had a friend that was very much finger on the pulse with what was going on. And, you know, in this country originally, they were talking about putting the military on the streets and basically like having, you know, going full hog, but they just didn't do that in the end. So we kind of just went, well, fuck it, I'll just come and stay with you and we'll just see how it goes, innit? So we did. We like lived in each other's pocket then, literally the whole lockdown, and it was amazing. Like everyone said to us, you know, don't get me wrong, we still have our bickers and ups and downs and bits, but like everyone would say to us, well, fuck, if you can kind of like live in each other's pocket 24/7, you know, for that amount of time, and it really be good. And it was good, and it is good. I'm not going to say was good, it is good. It gets better, to be honest, because you learn more and more, like, you know. I've always been a bit of a, again, this is another bit about myself. I'm a little bit of a, try to be a bit of a perfectionist. I always try and do stuff to the best of my ability. So I'm probably one of the worst fuckers to try and do something with, because no one can do it as fucking well as I can. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am that twat. Like, do you know what I mean? So I've always struggled doing stuff with people, because I'm always a bit like, well, you fucking do that a bit better, can't you? Like, do you know what I mean? I am that person, like, you know, which in some respects is not a bad thing, because, you know, when I do a job, I'm going to always do it to the best of my ability. But on the other respect, if you're trying to work with me, then I'm a dickhead. Like, so, but that bit of me never materialized with Dee. Like, even now it doesn't, like, do you know what I mean? Like, that bit of me, we do jobs together, we built the cat thing together, we did the whole garden together, we done like so much together. And we would just work. We would just, and I was even surprising myself, you know, like I get to the end of days where we've done loads of stuff together out in the garden. I think, fucking hell, we've not had a single row over doing something. Like, we've not had a single like bad word, a crossword. I've not felt like I've got short about something. And so that in itself, like, you know, I believe the work was done obviously before we even got together. That was done in a little short period of time before we met, like, you know, or over the Christmas time or whatever, when we were first seeing each other. But it was like that, even to me, I was like, fuck, that's important, that's big, you know, because I knew how much of a pain in the ass I could be with like being that kind of person where it's like, no one does it as good as I do. So yeah, so and from that, obviously, yeah. So then last year, made the conscious after living together, literally in each other's pocket for about a year. Life got a bit difficult because Dee got made redundant. Obviously, the Debenhams all closed down.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit in limbo, bit of a struggle for a while. Obviously for her, but she was lucky enough. She found a job that she really loves, that she's back in doing, to do with art and stuff. You know, we made the conscious decision then, like we'd lived together. So it's just like, well, fuck, I ain't going to go back to Somerset and live full time now, am I? Even though I still have my cottage and everything, you know, we did all sensible things. I still have my own, you know, I was still paying loads of money for that every month, even though I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just made the conscious decision. It was like, well, come up here. I'm not going to try and get employed by someone. I'm going to try and make my electrical business work. You know, she had a few friends that bought houses that then, like, I was fortunate enough that they give me a couple of little jobs and then bigger jobs. We were just putting the word around locally. I was obviously still traveling back to Somerset then, and then just staying with a friend in Taunton and doing work that way. Because to be honest, my work dried up during lockdown. The first year of lockdown, you know, my work stopped.
Yeah.
So the first like 4 or 5 months, you know, from like I expect it was about March, April, the phone stopped ringing, and I suppose I didn't really go back to work till like July, August, like, you know. So it was a good fair few months I just didn't do anything at all. And then went back to work, and then like I say, we made the conscious decision, moved to Wales, and then obviously then just moved everything, training. Like I let my gym in Sherborne go. Obviously like training up over here, found like a gym to train in CRA that I'd already trained in with like Ash Williams, Chris Reese and that anyway.
So that's Chris Reese Academy, is it? CRA?
Yeah.
So
and that was it really. Everything moved over. So I still do some work back in Somerset now because it earns good money. It's good to go back to see people. I don't go every week anymore because I'm lucky enough that I'm building the business this way. But I've kind of like, you know, as much as people laugh, anyone that knows me will tell you, like, I don't like going to work, so I usually don't. I am my own boss for a reason. So, but no, I still do work hard when I work. Like, do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, but you know, I'm definitely the kind of guy that like works just so I can live a good life.
Yeah.
And you know, my job does afford me to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, I really like dug in. I could have done the easy thing. I could have just gone and got qualified, you know, gone and got employed by someone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, but to be honest, I think I would have already been unhappy being employed. So that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Whereas like traveling a few hundred miles for work, being away, you know, don't get me wrong, I fucking hate being away at night time from D and stuff like, but it is what it is. The sacrifices we both make, we get on, you know, and you just do it. Hopefully there'll be a time in the next year or two when my business will be built up so well I won't have to work back in Somerset, like, you know. But the honest truth is, it ain't really that big of an issue, like, is the honest truth. It works and it works well. So yeah. So that was the Somerset to Wales transition in a few words.
So so you're training at Chris Reese Academy.
Yes.
Great school from what I hear, great reputation.
Absolutely outstanding gym facility. It genuinely is a place, I believe, that really backs up what it talks about. Like I've trained in quite a few different gyms. I've trained in lots of different gyms and just beelining about and training with different people. I've been fortunate enough to train with, you know, guys like yourself, set lots of seminars and, you know, like jiu-jitsu people do, you know, like pulling in knowledge from different people. But obviously been, you know, I started off with like Mike, obviously just doing my jiu-jitsu in like an MMA club, and then obviously went from there to GB Bar, from there to GB Street. Really knew that I'd want down with the whole GB kind of like thing. So went from there then on to Fightworks, stayed at Fightworks then because it was just like such a great training pool. Amazing group of students in there.